And I'm not sure, do we have somebody from Will Rollins' campaign there?
We have Will Rollins himself.
Will Rollins himself. That's probably almost as good as one of his spokespeople.
Not
Okay. And I don't think we got Diana Fink, so those would be our two people.
Okay, well, why don't we let Will go ahead and let us know what's going on in the Will Rollins camp.
Yes. Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Jerry. And this is the first time I've had a chance to address everybody after the June 7th primary. So I thought I would just start off by saying thank you to everybody on this Zoom for voting. Thank you to Shrina Karani and Brandon Mosley for running as history-making candidates. We, as a trifecta, were able to drive people to the polls in a way in this new congressional district that held Ken Calvert to under 50% of the vote. And that is a remarkably good sign for November. So for those of you who didn't see the final stat on this, he got about 48% of the electorate. The other four candidates in the race combined for about 52%. There was another Republican who ran, but he was an anti-Calvert Republican. And so we fully expect to and plan on reaching out to those voters and convincing them to vote for me in November. Typically what happens in general elections in November in California is that Republican turnout in the primary tends to be close to their ceiling. So for Calvert to be at 48% as a 30-year incumbent is an incredibly good sign. And I just want to say thank you to everybody again for your support from the beginning. And again, to the other Democrats who ran and talked about ideas and had just a lot of dignity and mutual respect for one another throughout the campaign. I think we really did a great job as a group, and the numbers in June showed it. Second update I wanted to share with everybody, fundraising. So we are at over 1.6 million raised, set another record in Q2. So we raised 690,000 about in Q2. We became, with that number, the first challenger in history to ever outraise Ken Calvert head to head in a quarter. And another, record-setting number there, and also one that I think really bodes well for our continued momentum, because even though we did spend, more money than Ken Calvert did in the primary, we also are in a position now where we've started to outpace him. And so that's going to continue to go into November with a huge exponential increase, thanks to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's addition of our race to its red to blue list. And for those of you who don't know what red to blue is, it's basically a nationwide program that the DSRC uses each cycle, and they identify candidates that they believe are top tier and also have the greatest likelihood of defeating the Republican incumbents. And so we've been added to that list, and some of you may have seen the news coverage a couple of weeks ago, but 5 of the last 6 candidates they added are in California. And so I think that a lot of people have been talking about California as the new blue wall in this midterm, and the latest edition of that red to blue list, I think, really underscores just how important this state and races like California 41 are going to be to keeping our House majority in November. Also wanted to share a couple of other great new endorsements we got. Governor Gavin Newsom has endorsed the campaign. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla has endorsed me. Really, really honored to have their support, their leadership, their help in flipping this seat from red to blue is going to be absolutely crucial. And then we've got some great news on our campaign side. Internally, we've hired a field director as of Friday. This is somebody who did a lot of incredible organizing work for a lot of great candidates nationally, including he was a Bernie organizer as well. And obviously that campaign's reputation for success and organizing is really incredible. And we're very, very happy to have him. Carter is going to put his contact info in the chat. If you're interested in helping get out the vote, which is of course going to be a huge focal point for us over the next 100 days here, you can reach out to him. And Matt is going to be our new field director. So really honored to have his support and just want to close by expressing my gratitude again to everybody at the Southwest Riverside County Dems, everybody who voted, and the other candidates in this primary, because we are going to flip this seat in November, and that would not have been possible without everybody's teamwork, frankly, as a party. And so really proud to be in this position, and I look forward to beating Ken Calvert in about 100 days.
Will, what can we do to help?
So you go to that link that Carter shared in the chat. That's a big one. We really do. Field and turnout is going to be absolutely crucial, right? So, as we've talked about before in some of these meetings, Democrats now outnumber Republicans in California 41, and midterm turnout historically drops between 100 to 200,000 voters off in the off years compared to the general election. If we just convince enough Democrats to mail in their ballots, we will win the election. And what we're trying to do to make sure that happens is focus on where the data tells us the Democrats who vote in 3 out of 6 elections live, right? And we have data that tells us where those voters are, but we need help reaching them. And so if you use the link in the chat that Carter put in there, that's going to be texting, phone banking, door knocking, and just ensuring and encouraging people to mail in their ballots, because as we've also talked about before, this is the first congressional midterm in the history of California where every voter is going to receive a mail-in ballot. And so we've got a big advantage there with folks having a much easier time of voting than they have before in a midterm. And so now it's really just a question of making sure they show up and send in the ballot or go to a voting center in advance and make sure that their voices are heard. And if we do that, and we've got a great field director now to help us with that operation, we were pretty leanly staffed before June. And so thank you to those of you who have already volunteered and helped our campaign. We've had, I think, almost 500 people sign up to help volunteer on this congressional campaign, which is just incredible. And now that we've got more staff to help us build out that data-driven field operation, we're just in a great position. So if you're willing and able to volunteer, please sign up for that link, and really appreciate your help.
Do you have any information yet on the event that you guys are talking about having in Wildemar in August?
That's a good question. Carter, if we have that finalized, would you mind dropping that in the chat for everybody? Because I don't know off the top of my head the date of that one. But if you're signed up for our mailing and you've signed up to volunteer, we will push that info out to you. And we're also planning to do a series of town halls across the district, and also, by the way, challenging Ken Calvert, of course, to debates, which we fully expect him to refuse to engage in, because that's been his MO for the last 3 decades. But we will nevertheless be engaging in town halls all over the congressional district, challenging him to debates, and we will push that information out to everybody, and would love to hear from you and see you at those town halls when we do them. And so Carter, if you can put that in the chat, if we've got that finalized, and then if not, we'll make sure we get a mailer out to the group overall with all of our upcoming events.
Excellent. Any other questions for Will while we have him?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you again.
I have
Thanks,
one question. I have one question. As an officially designated top tier candidate, what advice would you have for all the down ballot candidates, just in general, I guess, for running a successful campaign thus far? Knock on wood, obviously. I'm not trying to jinx the ultimate outcome, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no substitute for brutal hours. I wish I had something other than that to say, but that you really just got. What worked for me was putting in hours and hours on the phone, which can be painful, but also talking to people in person at or Zooms, and just trying to connect with as many people as humanly possible in the lead up to June. And then, the depressing reality, just to be totally blunt and candid, is that fundraising is just so important because of our broken campaign finance system, that I think, there's just not a substitute for trying to raise the resources we need to beat back Republican attacks. And the other thing I would say to folks who our down ballot this cycle is I want to be helpful to you. And I think that as somebody who's at the congressional level, obviously we've got a lot of local elected races. I think that, and I've had some great conversations with other folks who are on the ballot in this congressional district and have done some great coordination with them so far. But let's work together and let's continue to set up these team calls where we can collaborate. People like Fawzia, people like Brian Nash. We've done some great joint events together with canvassing. We've done some great joint community events, and that type of coordination is how we get more Democrats to the polls for all of us. And you can bet that I'm going to be using my resources not just to try to elect myself, but to make sure that we have a blue wave across Riverside County so that our county really gets represented by the people who actually live here, because we are in the majority. We can make it happen. And I really look forward to working with everybody on the ballot so that we have a smart, data-driven, get out the vote effort collectively as a party heading into November.
I love it. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Will. Another thing that I think is important is if you're on social media, follow Will, follow Brian, follow Stephen Houlihan, and share their posts. And, that way your friends will see, your friends and neighbors will see what you think is important. So by you following and sharing what they're sharing with you, it helps them get elected too.
Thank you, Fran. Yes. And I always forget to say that because of my counterintelligence experience where I avoided social media like the thing. But it is so true. It is so true. And it is absolutely critical. And actually, not only, it helps fundraise, it helps people get out the vote. It helps people know what's happening. It helps people show up to those things like town halls. And it is absolutely crucial. So thank you, Fran, for reminding me of that because I always forget to say it.
No problem. And follow our social media too, Southwest Dems. You'll get everything from all those candidates. Read your emails that we send out and follow us on social media. Thank you, Will.